Welcome to another episode of the Everyday Experiences Podcast, where we uncover potential design improvements in the world around us by exploring one frustrating experience at a time. I'm your host and chief observer, Geoff Wilson, based out of Auckland, and joining me again today is my good friend Guy Thompson, a curious industry-observing Kiwi based in Melbourne.
Thanks, Geoff. I like my job title is actually Strategic Initiatives Manager, but I guess that includes a lot of curiosity and stuff as well. So we're pretty close.
And also, I can never memorize what it is. I already forgot strategic something or other. So we go with a random title every time you're on. In today's episode, we're unpacking a different kind of experience, but specifically, we're wondering, well, what did we miss out on by being comfortable and complacent with what we're used to using, right? The things that we use every single day, whether it's a can opener or something on our laptop. Should we be more exploratory with our tools? So what might we be missing out on? And what happens then when we actually haven't sought out change, but change gets made to us? Somebody does change their product, and then should we embrace that or should we run away? What do you do? So that's what we wanted to get into today. But how are we going to ground this?
The tricky part about this is that human beings are creatures of habit, right? We find something that we enjoy using and we use it in a certain way. The way that we drive a car, the way that we stack stuff in the refrigerator, like whatever we do, we tend to find a system and a way of doing something and we kind of stick to it. Now, often in the world where there's changes that happen that are kind of thrust upon us, where they change the layout of a store that we like walking around, or there's a physical product and they've removed a button. You know, we use mobile phones and different devices where they've changed things or removed things and you can't plug your headphones in anymore. There's all these different examples of where those things changed in the real world, but those real world changes tend to happen slower. And I thought it would be really great to talk about today a tool that we use every day that has changed massively over the last 10 or 20 years, and that's your web browser, right? You're using it for work, you're using it for information gathering, research, using it in a different way every day across lots of different devices. And we tend to, I think, play within the same browser that we've used for a long time just because we prefer it. And so I thought it'd be great to inspect this and I thought it'd be great to look at this topic from the point of view of why do we use a browser in a certain way all the time? What do we prefer about it? And why are we not trying different things? Are we really sticking to our habits because we're comfortable? And what happens when they change something in that browser and we're annoyed with it? I thought it could be interesting to look at that.
I think the first thing that comes to mind right from the get-go is, well, I started imagining the people who just use whatever the default is, whether they're in a work context or a personal context. They just go, this is what's on my phone. I'm using this. And if you haven't refreshed a device in a very long time, especially, a PC, whereas like your phone, a lot of times now, if you get a new device, you can basically back up and restore everything that you had. So if you got a browser 6 years ago, 3 models ago in your phone, you might still be using the exact same one today because you've just gone quick, restore, done. You didn't need to actually search or consider, I should try something new. Whereas again, like, if you get a car, if your car dies, it's this new chance to go, well, it's been 6 years since I've done it. What now should I be looking for? There's a whole new conversation. But with browsers, I think the biggest thing that comes to me is a browser is not the end experience, right? It's not the thing that people are going out of their way to get. I mean, they will potentially, but they're not getting a browser and going, yay, I've got a browser now. It's, well, I've got a browser now so that I can do a thing. There's something I want to actually do with it.
Yeah, it's to a certain extent, the analogy is a little bit like a vehicle, right? That browser is a vehicle that allows you to go somewhere, to drive the internet, to go visit places, right? So it really is like a vehicle. It has those basic features you're looking for. It does have safety features included in terms of protecting you and pop-up windows and all these different things. It's protecting your information and it's getting you where you want to go quickly and safely. But each one of these different browsers does have a different way of doing things. And sometimes when those changes happen, it can be quite jarring. So let's talk about like the first part of this experience, which is what we're usually using web browsers for, and probably certainly for the last 20 or 30 years of web browsers being around, it was really about information gathering first. And we do that in terms of news, updates from different social media networks. We were kind of using these web browsers to go and find information. And once you've found that information, you're either making notes, you're writing something down, you're copying and pasting something, or you're opening another tab so you can find some more information. So what happens when you're going through that information gathering process? Do you end up with just way too many tabs open? What's it like for you?
Yeah, I mean, I literally had a to-do list item. I'm a man of to-do lists. And one of them recently was go through my phone's browser tabs and start clearing them out. Because I use it as, there is bookmarks, but I've realized for me, I use bookmark now as these are my go-to shortcuts, like for my
Mm.
browser. But then when I have like a tab that I want to, or an article that popped up that I want to see, or a video I want to watch, I just leave those open on my phone now as tabs. Like I just don't close them. And hopefully if my browser crashes or I restart my phone or whatever it is, hopefully they're still there when I restart it, that I didn't just lose it, because I just leave them there as reminders to myself. Oh, I should really check this out someday. So that's definitely how I'm using the tabs version of it nowadays.
But the thing that happens with having that many tabs open is that the browser that you're using will usually show you page thumbnails of those windows. And I find on mobile, you very quickly run out of space to see how many they are. You're not going to scroll up. And I know that on Chrome, the number that shows you how many browser tabs open then changes to a smiley face once you get to 99
Really?
tabs. And I've only ever seen the smiley face because I've got more than 99 tabs open permanently.
I've got like
So
five. So when you're like a lot, I'm like, yeah, to me, five is a lot right now. But yeah.
oh, and I did this the other day with an iPad, and I think there's one way that you do it. I think you switch to the thumbnail view, and it said that I had 326 tabs, like 326 windows open.
Yeah, no, you're never finding anything. That's like your attic. Like you put all this stuff in boxes, you put it up in your attic, and you're never going to go through that. It just sits there unaccounted for.
Exactly. And it's there for so long that then you can see like the thumbnail. I'm just scrolling through now and I can see the thumbnail of what that web page looked like at the time. But the problem is if you tap back into that page, it refreshes. And so if it's a news story that's changed location, or if it's a website that doesn't even exist anymore, it's gone. So but I know what you mean. Like you've got them open because you're like, wow, I really want to read that article, or I really want to have a look at that site again. This is a really useful thing. But yeah, I'm not going to store them as a bookmark because, again, you fill up that list of bookmarks. And I find now that list of bookmarks is really your most recently used site. And the browser you're using, I'm using Chrome, tends to show me what those most recently used sites are when I open a new tab. It's kind of like automatically propagating that little kind of bookmark bar at the bottom for you based on regularly used websites. And I find that works. I'm usually only visiting probably about 6 of them at once. As you said, like having those 5 different tabs, that's pretty much what you're using.
Yeah, and on that note, I just realized there is that third level, which might be what you're referring to. There's bookmarks I've saved, there's tabs I have open though I want to remember, and just as you noted of the browser being smart enough and following you enough, there's when I click a new tab on my phone and open up like a new Google thing, I don't even know what to call them because they're not bookmarks I've saved, but like my own personal websites on there, because that's the way I access my own site. Is I don't
Exactly.
actually type it in and I don't click a bookmark. I know that if I click new tab, I can click my little icon here that shows up along with some other random web pages, and that'll take me straight to it because it's always there. I don't know what governs it, but I guess it's just all an algorithm.
Exactly. That's just like your regularly used sites, right? That it sort of propagates that little list. And usually on a mobile phone, you've probably got 4 of those, and then below that you've got bookmarks, reading list, recent tabs, history. I noticed below that you've got the discover thing. I had to turn that off because every time I'd open a new tab, I would then tap on one of the discover things, and I'd be off on some tangent with some horrible news story I didn't even want to look at. And again, like I think so many apps have that now, where if you go to use the search function is so small, but the discovery is so massive. Every time I try to type something into Instagram, I'm immediately distracted by the
Yeah.
gigantic screen full of interesting stuff to look at. I'm like, that's not what I went there for. And then half an hour later, you're like, I was actually trying to like type in someone's name and see what they're up to. Did they have a good holidays or something? And I've just been on Instagram or TikTok or whatever. And these apps are designed to pull your time in, right? Like this
Yeah,
is what
I mean, that's what I get in trouble with my wife from is, yeah, she'll go like, hey, can you look up the timing of the restaurant when it opens? And I open it and you're right. The Discovery tab is like, Halo does this. Boba Fett's new show. Come look at that. I'm like, oh, I love Boba Fett. Let
yeah,
me click that. And then an hour later, did you book reservations? Nope.
it knows what your most delicious distraction is, right? So it's like this, it's this supervillain inside your phone that's like, I can steal your time. And so like, yeah, making sure you turn those things off is a challenge, but it's really rewarding. This thing I find fascinating now is I turned off the tracking in Chrome, and I just get all sorts of really bizarre ads now. It's so much fun to just see all these crazy clothing websites and strange devices and sort of things for like I'm not even in the demographic of the thing that they're just advertising to me. It's completely random to see who's buying these ads that are not targeted to anyone. It's just completely random. but they're using like different tracking information they can get on you, but nothing about your personality, just like based on your proximity of where you were during the week. And they'll kind of try to make a guess of what to sell you. So that experience of being tracked through browser, we know that's changed. And of course, with iOS, there's all these different changes now in terms of privacy. So that's, I think, a really great change that's happened, where the experience is a little bit more personal and customized, and you can focus a bit more. But I think the thing around information gathering that is a challenge is, because on a mobile device, you don't have a lot of screen real estate, you can very quickly have too many tabs open, too many pages, and it's a little bit easier to get lost. I think on the desktop, I think it's a far more manageable experience for me. If I just happen to suddenly have a dozen tabs open and I just run out of time, I'll copy and paste all of the web addresses for those tabs, put it in like an email list for like, I'll just read this later. And then you kind of in that little period of deep work where you're doing a whole bunch of research, I've got a whole bunch of pages open and I don't want to lose this. So I kind of store it in a way that's harder to do on your phone, because I don't kind of have both hands and a mouse and a spare document over. It's much more manual to do that. So I feel like sometimes that information gathering process on your phone is challenging, because it's not as easy to copy and paste and create a note. I feel like the desktop research experience for gathering information is one that works a lot better for me.
Yeah, and on that note of using between devices, especially if you start researching on one and the other, there is the ecosystem to consider. So because I do use Chrome on my desktop and phone, and I'm logged in and it's all synced, if I open a page on one, I can go to like the history tab or whatever on the desktop and guess, oh, here's a page you have it up on your phone, so I can just pick up where I left off and switch it. And so it's really good to have that that syncing, the save passwords. And so if I save a password on one, it's saved on the other. But then it also creates a lot of headache too, because I've got more than a few emails, let's say, for different purposes, different reasons. But then trying to switch between them is not necessarily the best, because you've got to you can't just open up a tab and go, oh, I want to use a different Google profile in this tab, because you're already signed into your other. So you've got to open up like a new session that's this other thing, and then have two windows, and you can't share bookmarks. You can't share, your passwords between it. You can't share this and that. So I end up repopulating both of them. So when I think of browsers, I get back to that same issue then of like, yes, I've got all these different accounts for different things, but I just want one place that just everything can open up in it.
It's a good point, because I think there's a real usability challenge around the way browsers currently work, because there's a bit of a legacy issue here around the way they work, them being very accessible and easy for people to use who don't necessarily use them all the time as much as we do. So you probably describe ours as sort of power users, that we are working all day long. We've got browser tabs open. It's part of what we do for work. There's tools that we use that only work inside a browser. We're using webmail. We're using drive storage. There's all these different things that we're using a web browser for. As a tool set, but those tool sets do relate to different kinds of work that we do, so they're kind of attached to different accounts. And I don't know quite yet if the browser really supports that, because I literally did this yesterday. I was looking at YouTube for some tips on how do I manage all of these different profiles within Chrome specifically. And once I went through that process, I realized I was actually doing it the right way, but it wasn't any easier. There was no actual tips to make it any easier, because all I have to do is have this whole session window open with lots of tabs. And then when I'm not using it, I minimize it. And just before we jumped into this podcast, I'm like, I probably want to free up a little bit more memory. I want to make sure the computer's running as fast as possible.
I'll close 350 tabs down to 349 tabs. I'll get rid of a few.
And so I'm closing all these sessions down, going, well, I just hope that all those windows are there when I go back into that session. There wasn't really a way for me to kind of exit out of that session as easily as possible. And I'm guessing by just clicking that little red kind of window close button, that those tabs are going to be there when I go back. So I feel like I'm trying to keep myself a bit more organized, where I only have that one window and the tabs that relate to that particular profile. But I feel like, you've got to kind of go back down to zero occasionally, just close them all, because it's too easy just to get lost and kind of leave your computer on with just 56 tabs open and 12 windows. And you're like, wow, this is just a bit much. And it's easy to get overwhelmed, right? Because you've got so much stuff staring at you. When you want to get stuff done and be efficient, you're going to have 2 or 3 tabs open. That's it. I've got something to do, being really specific. I've got to get some work done.
This goes back to that original question of, well, are we missing anything? Maybe some of the browsers actually solve this that I just have no idea about. I'm complaining about multiple Google Chrome tabs. And so the one thing I need is I do need something to be synced between all my devices, because that's my ecosystem currently is if I spill a glass of wine or whatever on my laptop, yes, it sucks money wise, but I don't actually lose anything because everything is so backed up that I just get a new laptop and every Chrome thing is there, every Google Drive thing is there. It's all synced together, so I'm not actually losing anything stored anymore. But then I've got those other panes of different profiles, different logins, different password settings and stuff, or work blocking, the syncing features for stuff. So at work you can't have the access to the same helpful bookmarks that you might have at home, and in the guise of efficiency and security. From my point of view, but we're not going to get. Let's not get into that part,
No,
right? But
but
it's
you're right. Like there's all these factors that play into the usability and the challenge around a browser, because there's different things you want to do with it, right? So we've talked about the information gathering phase, which can be quite overwhelming because you end up with too many tabs open. You click a whole bunch of links, you get distracted, you go down the rabbit hole, and you go, wow, this is not what I wanted to do. I've actually got like a task to do. So, for example, let's just talk about when you're actually performing a transaction.
Mhm.
Like you're going along because, all right, I need to buy some tickets or I need to download something. And you're kind of like, you've got a really specific thing you want to do. The first thing I almost always do is like open up a new window just for that thing, because I
Oh
know
yeah.
that I'm going to have to do something and there's probably going to be a couple of tabs. I might have to compare to my email to see what the instructions were. I might want to have a map open so I can see where the venue is. I've got to like tie all those things together so I can get this piece of work done efficiently and not lose track of what I'm trying to do.
Before you continue your story there, it's also considering, well, which browser are you using, your desktop or your phone? Because I know for myself, on the desktop, you just have to open a new one. But on a phone, you might have that temporary browser window that, like, I've got a Google search bar. If I click that, it's not a browser. It's like a temporary one. So if I went to make a second search, it overwrites my tab, my active search, if you will. And so in that
Mm-hmm.
sense, like you're saying, it's that consideration. If I'm going to go buy tickets, but I might have to research a few things, I need to actually go out of my way to open up the browser and open up new tabs so that I can keep different sessions, if you will, in different ones. So I'm not overriding myself. So I mean, that's already different there.
Exactly, because I might not know the ticket provider, for example. So there's no guarantee that I'm going to go to the ticket provider I usually use for events or concerts or whatever, because the thing I'm looking for might not be there. So I'm going to start off with a web search for the thing that I'm looking for and be like, okay, cool. I might click on that first link that's a promo. I might do a little bit more research about the reviews for the location, the venue. Is it an exhibition? Is it a concert? When you're in the moment, you feel like you know everything about what's going on. You understand the offer, what the product is, the location, the venue, what the experience is going to be like. And you go through this whole process because you're in the marketing funnel, you're making the decision, you're ready to take action, and you've made the transaction. Like an hour later, you'll be like, what did I just buy tickets to? What do I have to do? You know all that information's in your email. You're gonna have to read the instructions of like, how do I actually find this restaurant? What entry do I use for the sports arena? Where do I park the car? Like there's all this extra information that comes after around the logistics of how do I actually do this thing that I just paid money for. The intention right off the bat is to like, I need to go to get the ticket. I've got to get in while the tickets are still available. And then after that, you're like, oh, I'll work out how to get there later. I've just got to get in and get a ticket.
So, I mean, does that really matter at that point? So, for information gathering, there's different ways to store profiles and all that. But for transactions, other than making sure you open up maybe different ones, as we said, to not lose it or lose your
Mm.
session, but does the browser choice itself really matter then? Do we even need to be thinking about, oh, well, my browser's insufficient in doing that? I mean, I guess in transactions like credit cards, how they store credit cards or not, maybe that's an important value for you in terms of which browser do you want to use. Maybe security and features like that can come into play, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Because I think when you get to the end of that transaction process, you're like, right, okay, I'm going through my normal ticket providing vendor that I've used before. So you've got a high level of trust there, and you kind of log in with your email, and then it says you've got to update your password, and you check your email, and you go back, and you're like, okay, I've still got like 8 minutes to finish my transaction, and then you kind of come to that credit card page, and it's like, yeah, what's your level of trust with that browser in general? Do you have all your cards stored there? Do you just need to put the security code in? Versus is it a very one-off transaction on a platform or a site you've never used before, so it doesn't have any of your information? Do you let the browser inject that credit card number, or do you still fill it out manually yourself? I still feel more comfortable by not letting the browser store those credit card numbers, but then I find sometimes if it's a really high trust website, I'll then kind of click OK, and then I'll have accidentally clicked OK for Chrome to store the credit card. Then I'm like, well, I'm done now. Chrome's got the information. It's in there. But we know there's vulnerabilities around that. We know the security challenges around having that. And you should kind of go through and like delete them all and refresh them and change all those passwords. But, we never find time for that because it's not a priority. The priority was to go get the tickets.
Yeah, and actually that reminds me in terms of password management. I use a password manager so that again, once again, I can store stuff in a much more seamless way, and I can search for a certain password for a certain site, update notes related to it, like, oh, I want to remember that here's my username and my email that I use for this, and here's my account number in one place that a Google Chrome password manager just doesn't do. It's just a list of passwords. But then there's some issues that I can run into because Chrome, at least, because that's the one I'm most familiar with, it starts suggesting strong passwords now. But the problem is that I'm finding when it suggests a password for me, like, cool, that does save me a few steps of a 16-digit password, but it doesn't give me the option to copy that brand new password to put it manually into my new password manager. So I have to kind of hope that by clicking save or, it's login or it's sign up or whatever, that some pages my password manager recognizes. It goes, oh, I just saw you enter a new password field. Do you want to save that? But if it doesn't notice it, especially because Chrome gave it a new password, it's like there's now a new disconnect that's supposed to be helpful, but actually is making things a little bit worse.
I think it's this topic we've looked at around discomfort versus comfort. We're comfortable, entering our credit card information now. A lot of people still aren't, and they refuse to, and they'll just go to the shop and buy like a MasterCard or a Visa, a pre-charged one from the supermarket, and just use that, which is a great thing to do online, because then you're not susceptible. So there's a limit on that particular card that you've bought. So the challenge there is around how comfortable are you doing those transactions, and do you want your browser to store that? But when it comes to passwords, there's of course a large school of thought around the usability for that, and saying, do we even need to have people remembering passwords? Shouldn't a browser just create the password for you, have it stored in an encrypted piece of code in the browser, and it just uses that code when you happen to reach that website? If the code's not working or you can't remember, you'll then go check your email. But then again, there's the question of the vulnerability around your email account, and should you have all of your passwords there? And do you then use multi-factor authentication? Do you have to get a text message code every single time you go to a website? And then do you have to do like a facial record? Like, there's all these different factors that play into how intense that security should be. And of course, the advice would be make it absolutely as secure as possible. But we know that that's not necessarily convenient. We're creatures of habit. We want it to be easy. And we don't think the chances of us getting hacked or our identity getting stolen is going to be very high. So it's that trade-off between how secure do I need to be in each transaction, and is there some really high-value transactions where I have to be extra careful, and there's low-value, basic, easy, everyday transactions can just go through, and kind of like, if there's a small problem with that one, I'm not massively at risk. It's a trade-off, right? It's a really challenging balance.
So that's that same level of like, yeah, if I could just turn that stuff off, it'd be great, because then I don't have to worry about it. But then, yeah, it's not secure. And then oh, wow, I'm going to get a little bit political, but I can't help it. It's like, well, I've never caught the virus, and so it must not be a problem. Like, yeah, and it's not a problem until you do. And then you realize, oh, shit, I can't breathe anymore. Or in this case, I've had all my money stolen and everything else corrupted. So, yeah. I'm leaving that in here. Normally, I cut these things out, but I'm making a statement here.
Wait, it has to do. You have to put explicit on if you say shit, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, I could, but for 50 people listening, I don't care.
Okay, cool.
I would love it if somebody got that upset because they listened to it and they were so in tune that they heard the one time I said shit and they flagged me for it.
Okay, very good. Okay, so I think I know exactly what you mean. It doesn't matter until it matters, right? We think we're not going to be exposed to something, and then as soon as we experience it, we're like, oh my God, we've become evangelists for like, you have to do this thing, and there's this new way to protect yourself against this thing. And it's not until it happens that it becomes a reality for you, right? And so I think that's an interesting part about transactions and going through that process and the trust level involved for like credit cards and stuff. And that's certainly something we've seen evolve massively in the last, I think 20 years, really how, and much more so in the last 10, where e-commerce has become so ingrained. And I think the next stage after that we've kind of moving on from is how much power you have with different tools that you can use inside a web browser, including ones that you actually subscribe to. We all use different tools that we might actually have a monthly subscription to. It's effectively a piece of software as a service that's running inside the browser. And with different browsers, you're going to have a different experience with the way that tool works. But I think it's really fascinating that browser experience is now actually delivering something of value that you're actually subscribing to on a weekly or monthly basis. And this is everything from streaming video. It's everything from Netflix. It's everything from Dropbox, different ways to store your files. We are using the web browser to access really powerful tools and software for design, things like Canva. these tools are really complicated and have huge usability and user interface challenges around different browsers. Is it mobile? What plugins does that user have? Is it only JavaScript? You've got to have these things disabled. It's a really complicated design challenge to get that really, really intense tool working all the way through like 3D games and metaverse platforms that happen inside a browser.
Well, so do people actually choose a browser based on those things they're trying to use? Because I mean, I know I don't, but I'm just one person.
Mm.
But do people, for those kind of tools you mentioned from Canva and others, are people actually that you know of, searching for a new browser that's better performing just to do that thing that they need to do?
I don't think it's so much around searching for a different platform that allows you to do it differently. It's more around, is there a recommendation from that provider as to the particular browser that you should be using, right? And I think we see this challenge a lot around Safari and Chrome and Firefox. At different times, there'll be different tools which suddenly, for some security update or patch reason, suddenly Firefox is not available, or Safari is not available yet, or Chrome was available up until this update. The incentive there is for the makers of different browsers to update them as quickly as possible and add features to them. So, as many websites as possible work on them. But for these really complicated tools where they're delivering a huge amount of code through the browser, that may not have a massive user base yet where it's important for those updates to happen. And of course, sometimes the browser maker will change something that then kind of breaks the way that website works. And then you've got to go in and disable something, and you've got to have JavaScript turned off or turn it back on or install the latest version, whatever it is, to get this thing working.
All the software world nightmares come to mind again of, when you're in the room planning your new release for the new version of the website or whatever, and there's all the debates of, does it work on this browser and this browser, and which versions does it work on? And you've got to it's that trade-off in testing. At least, do we have enough time left in our our budget and scope before release to test out all of the different browsers, all of the different iterations of software versions and everything else with this latest version of the website? And then also it's the business decision of, well, how far back do we support? How many customers might we lose? Because depending on your target base, hey, I'm going to make a stretch here. I'm going to guess that, let's say it's Figma, and again, it's a UI design tool. They're probably thinking the people that are using our tool are going to be the kind of people who are up to date. They're using the most up to date version at all times, which means they probably have the most up to date browser. They probably have auto updates on, so Chrome and Safari and whatnot just auto update without them having to do anything, so they don't need to worry about it. Whereas, again, like a bank, you might have that serious conversation of how many of our customers are using really ancient phones and devices and haven't updated, they're still in Windows XP and things like that, right? Businesses that have never migrated to other things. How many of them do we have? And should we make that decision on the new website or the new internet banking platform or new whatever it is only works on the latest and greatest browser? Sorry to everybody else. Let's provide you with some steps for how to use the new thing or how to upgrade your own browser. But at that point, you're kind of drawing a line in the sand and going, sorry, you have to use it. But then again, games and stuff have long done that forever. Of you need the latest graphics card, you need the latest this and that. So the browser, in some ways, is no different.
There's two big factors in that point you just made there. One is around common standards and how long we take on a common standard for, and the frustration around at what point do you upgrade that standard and you migrate to the next standard. And the other side of that point is for those users that don't decide to update or are very slow at updating, are they automatically left out of the capability to use that particular platform? If the pop-up for the reminder on the web browser doesn't work, when you're attempting to log into internet banking, it says, oh, you're just going to need the latest version for this, and people decide not to. How many potential customers do you lose that drop off that? Doesn't matter if it's banking or e-commerce or software as a service. You've had a subscriber, a user, a customer who then suddenly doesn't want to continue down that journey. How do you intervene to get in touch with them, to take them along the journey? Do you, send them an email, call them up and say, hey, we've noticed you haven't logged in for a while. Do you need a hand? Companies simply don't have enough time for people to reach out to do that based on the lifetime customer journey. Depends on what the product is to how valuable they are. But is Netflix going to give you a call because you haven't logged in for 3 months? They're too busy.
And so I think the last area of browsers that comes to mind in terms of at least the feature side that helps you determine, the overall question again, should we keep using the one we have? Should we try something different? we've touched on a little bit here and there of extensions. That's one of the other big
Mm.
powerhouses of browsers. It's not just security, not just password management, not just bookmarks, but extensions. And so, how customizable is your experience for the power users in that case? I mean, so I used to have extensions that were really customized, like different versions of YouTube downloaders and Vimeo downloaders and things like that when I used to make kind of clip shows, but I stopped doing that. So I stopped needing it. So therefore I stopped needing to even have a browser store that had those kind of extensions on it. I mean, what kind of interesting ones do you have?
It's a good point, because I've mainly been a Chrome user for a long time, but every time I want to be able to download a video or something, I'll need to then open Firefox to install an extension and use it. And every time I go back in, the extensions that I was using last time don't work. YouTube is constantly changing the code base to make sure that you can't download the content, right? All this copy protection, which is absolutely fair. But if you have something specific that you
It's
need to
absolutely
do,
fair. I just don't want to do it. I want
know,
what I want.
because if you're creating a piece of content and it falls within fair use and you need to get a copy of that clip, you're going to have to be able to download it from YouTube. So
Good recovery.
those tools are there, and we want to be able to customize the browser in a certain way when you're doing those power user things, right? You might have to download the audio from a clip that's on a news site or something, and there's all these kind of workarounds that you can do, because at the end of the day, if you can see it in your web browser, there will be a tool that will enable you to download that thing. Everything from not being able to right click on an image in Tumblr that you can't download, all the copy protection that websites use, people are still creating those tools for it. But often those tools will still get shut down really, really quickly. So it's interesting to be able to mod and modify your browser, but you find it sort of impacts the performance and the usability of the machine effectively. So if we're going to use the car analogy, sometimes you want something you drive that just works perfectly, which is going to be your Chrome or your Safari. But sometimes you want something you can kind of hack around with, and that's definitely the Firefox space.
That's exactly what I've done. It's, to stick with the car, I used to have, a little Kia that I modded everything to because it wasn't that fast. And so I was trying to invest all of this time and money and energy to add stuff to it to make it better. In this case, like extensions on a browser. And then I was like, just like with the car, I was like, you know what? I just need something that it's no hassle. It just auto updates. It's got the basics. I can kind of use the software on it that I need to use. I can visit whatever sites I need to browse. And I can record podcasts like this that we're doing. We're doing this in a browser. We're not using a special software
Absolutely.
or anything.
Yeah.
But in that case, I just needed a standard run of the mill thing, and Chrome to me sufficed for that. It's there. It's easy to use. I don't really have that incentive to look because there's no huge performance boost for my everyday kind of use that I'm looking to get out of it. As if I was searching for that hot car that had the super 300 horsepower engine. I don't really have that use right now. But I guess if I did, perhaps I'd go for it. So what incentive do people have to actually look for something new? Like, is there a reason why they shouldn't keep using that if it works for them today?
I think it's about taking the macro view around the fact that we're creatures of habit, we're creatures of comfort. We like doing things in a certain way. As soon as we find a way that we like to do something, we don't really change that often. And when you're coming at this from a design point of view and you're thinking about the way that you design things around strategy, around usability, it is interesting and important to try different tools to see if you can achieve things in certain ways. Let's take a step back and actually just try and see what are people doing in different ways that are innovative and interesting. And if you have a little play in a sandbox and try to just do one thing, go find some news, go buy some tickets, go check your bank balance on a different browser, you'll kind of see what the experience is like, and if it loads differently, if it feels different. And even what we've seen lately with Safari putting the search bar at the bottom of the window so it's easier to access on mobile. But then, there's a tab there that you can click to in the settings to make it go back up at the top again if you don't want to do that. But then does that paradigm around having the search bar at the bottom become dual? Will you start seeing it on the desktop where you have the search bar at the top and the bottom, right? We have all these different things that we're very used to around the way that the tools work, but it's good to have a fresh look at them to see if they should change, and you can see it from a different point of view.
And I think the search bar at the bottom is one point I've been waiting to mention the entire time. It's quite interesting because on a mobile phone, it does make sense. Your thumb is at the bottom, and that's why they put it there. It's easy to access, and you access it frequently. So put the most frequent things right there within access, where you don't need to reach out of your way. However, this is breaking 30 years of browsing history and standardization. And so there's always that topic we talk about in the design world of, be consistent, but for the right reasons. And so you don't need to be blindly consistent just because every browser has always had the search bar at the top. They do have a good claim. Put it at the bottom, change that up, do it for the right reasons. Break a trend on purpose with a good intention for it, not just an arbitrary, oh, the designer just felt like at the bottom was pretty. Do it for good reason.
Mhm.
But what this reminded me then is outside of those little changes like that, that is, I mean, that is a point. You could go, well, I really hate this bottom nav bar. I want to switch to a new browser that only does the top weight. That's one of those ways I mentioned in the beginning where, sometimes you didn't want to make the change, but a change was, forced upon you. And now you have a choice. Do you want to stick with this or not?
It's a fascinating angle on that, because part of the challenge around that is that there's different features on Safari that work really, really well, and there's different features on Chrome that work really well. And as a user, I'm not quite sure which one to use for which thing at the moment, and which kind of mechanic and style is really good for particular things. Because I'm kind of just, I'm using it the way that I prefer to use it, and I've done for a long time. So changing out of that and having a look around to see how are people using it in a different way? What is their approach like? Because part of this comes back down to fear at the end of the day. We kind of have this innate fear that things won't work the way that we want them to. I won't be able to complete a transaction. I won't be able to log in. Things will be difficult to find. So we sort of stick in the area that we're familiar with. But challenging ourselves to go outside of that area and experience something new, we might find that we actually prefer that area, that it actually works in a different way that's really beneficial. Or we come back with new knowledge to say, hey, you know what? The way that I was doing it is really good, but I know it is for this reason.
And I think the hardest thing about trying to change something new, though, what would hold me back is again that mindset of, well, all of the extensions and plugins and passwords I've got saved and credit cards I got saved and bookmarks I've got saved. Some of those I know how to migrate, between one browser and another. And if anything, chances are when you download a new browser, it offers, hey, do you want to import your bookmarks from Edge or whatever? But it doesn't necessarily offer to do it for passwords and everything else. And so that might be a limiting factor, but maybe those things exist today. Maybe that already is there. And I would hope that there is like an easy switching kind of process of, hey, we'll import all of your old stuff, try our new one. And if browsers haven't done that, maybe that's a consideration for them. Make an easy switch option.
Exactly. I think it's a possibility, but I think we still see browsers in two areas, right? You have the browser that you're using every day. It's your daily driver that includes everything that you're looking for, your passwords, your recently used websites, every tab that you still have open from every install and backup you have. Or then you've got a different browser that you're using for a specific reason. It may have increased security. It may have a particular protocol that you can access, some type of coding that you're doing that requires additional plugin. It might be if you're purchasing cryptocurrency or different things that require different plugins that might not be available on Chrome or Safari. There's these additional power user features that different browsers will have that usually the casual everyday user won't need. And so it's obviously in the best interests of Apple and Google to make sure that their major flagship browsers are as sticky as possible. So adding these different features around, remembering passwords and thinking of different ways to make it even more easy for you to use kind of keeps people into that ecosystem. So I think that's the point that I kind of want to make around this, that to be aware that these providers will be doing certain things to really keep you inside their ecosystem of the way that browser works. And I think we can probably agree that Chrome's been extremely successful in doing that. But having a look outside to see what these different browsers look like, how to use them in different ways, the different mechanics that might be interesting about them, I think for a designer, that's really important to be able to do. Because if all you're trying to do is solve user experience and design challenges with your point of view, with the browser that you use every day, you will be missing out on the way that other people respond to different browsers that they happen to be tied to, that they like for some reason. And it's like this tribal thing of like, oh, these people use that browser, or these people use that one, and it's a totally different club. Just being aware of the way that they work, the way that they like using that tool, helps you be a bit more open-minded about usability in general.
I want to re-emphasize that point you just said there. This is basically a call to all of the designers and product managers and developers. It's yes, you are used to using your things and your environment, but remember, you are not the user. People will be using different things than you. They will be having different purposes, whether it's information gathering, as we talked about, or transactions, or gaming, or designing online, or some other software. You need to watch people and understand how they use theirs. If you aren't going out and trying something new yourself, you're missing on all these other features and other ways to do things that might help your own product. So maybe you're not the browser designer, but you've got your own product online, your own service online, your own website, or whatever it is. If you don't know that one browser offers this cool way to store passwords versus another, or one browser offers an extension that the other one doesn't, you can make your users more informed and have a better experience by understanding the different lays of the land and suggesting those things. I think that's a great kind of point to end on. So it's at least a good call out for people designing products and services. You all should definitely be trying different browsers no matter what, at least once, or once a year maybe, to see what's the latest greatest thing, to know how to make your product stand out better. And as for the consumers, the people using all of those things, I guess the same still applies. Go try it once, see what you might be missing, because you don't know what you don't know unless you actually try it. What's the easiest way you can think of to just try to get started with a new browser, just to see what you're missing out on?
The challenge I always set myself is just to try and do something simple. So it doesn't matter if I'm trying to learn a new piece of software or I'm trying a different browser or something else, is go through the exercise of just trying to achieve something simple. So go through the process of buying a ticket or looking up a location on a different map on something that works in a different way. If you go through the process of just starting with those really simple tasks, you can kind of take away from that how the experience is different. Was it easier? Was it harder? What did you like about it? Because this is essentially what we ask users to do when you're doing user research. We're observing them, we're seeing what they do. Flip that around on yourself and try to use tools in a different way, and think about the way that you approach using a tool, what annoys you, what frustrates you, what your comfort level is. Because if we're in the business of trying to get people to use things in a different way, and we might be presenting them with a better, a more efficient, a well-researched way to use it, they may still be uncomfortable with the transition and that shock of the new. So the way that I think we can get better at understanding what that feels like is to try it for ourselves, and then we can get better at packaging up how that transition looks to people to make it as seamless as possible.
And I think I have to, because I don't want to become that old guy that has to ask kids and everybody, like 3-year-olds these days, how to act. Hey, son, how do you access my passwords? Because I can't find the setting. I don't want to be that. So I guess you're right. It's in my best interest to avoid that level of anxiety as well. Start trying things out.
Exactly. So that's the week of experimentation. We'll check back next week and see how many browsers we've used.
Man, I don't like to actually put an actual time limit. Otherwise, it's the whole, I'll do that thing. Yeah. It sounds like a great idea. And then a week later, have you done it? No. A year later, have you done it? No. Okay, maybe we'll actually set a podcast, the first task on this show of an assignment to actually try something different. Otherwise, will we actually do it? Probably not.
Absolutely. All right, so tune in for part 2 where we actually use some browsers and realize how old we are.
Well, with that, folks, thank you for listening to this episode, and I hope you see the design of your everyday world in a new way, specifically the browsers that you maybe found this podcast on. To see examples of what we were talking about today, and to keep this conversation going, you can find and follow us at Everyday EXP Pod, or myself at Geoff Wilson HCD. Please consider leaving us a rating and subscribing to the show in your favorite podcasting app, and checking out some of our previous episodes. And as always, just remember, you don't have to have a fancy job title to start noticing and improving the everyday experiences wherever you work. Thanks, and we'll be on the air again soon, potentially with a different browser.
But the interesting thing, so I think there's two interesting, fucking interesting.
You can say a few of them.
It's an interesting. I have to not say interesting. Right? And then the other side of it is a point that I've completely forgotten while I was talking. Where's my tabs? I have 600 tabs. Tab anxiety. Oh my god.